Before we begin, pause with me for just a moment. If you've ever loved someone so deeply that the thought of losing them quietly sat in the back of your mind, if you've ever held on because letting go felt scarier than staying the same, then this story is going to stay with you. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. Because this channel doesn't just tell stories. It gives words to the emotions people feel every day, but rarely have the courage to say out loud. Now let me tell you something I never imagined I would share with anyone. My name is Elise. I'm 44 years old. And for most of my life, I've only known how to be two things: a mother, and someone who learned how to stay strong, even when no one was watching. My son's name is Lenny. He's 22 now. But when I look at him, when I really look, I don't always see the man the world sees. Sometimes I still see the little boy who used to grip my hand too tightly in crowded places. The same boy who would hide behind my legs whenever strangers tried to talk to him. The boy who believed that as long as I was nearby, nothing bad could happen. It was always just the two of us. No partner to lean on. No second parent to share the weight. No one else to step in when things got overwhelming. Just me and him. We grew up together in a way most people don't understand. When you raise a child alone, you don't just guide them through life. You survive alongside them. Every bill paid late. Every night spent wondering if you were doing enough. Every moment you told yourself, I'll rest later. Right now he needs me. And when you walk through every storm side by side like that, something happens. You stop being just family. You become each other's safe place. Each other's anchor. Each other's entire world. I didn't realize how fragile that world was until one quiet evening changed the way I looked at everything. It was late when Lenny came home that night. Later than usual. I heard the door open softly, like he didn't want to be noticed. The sound of his shoes hitting the floor was slower than normal. Heavy. I was in the kitchen, pretending to focus on nothing in particular, when I glanced up and saw him standing there. He looked exhausted. Not the kind of tired that comes from a long day, but the kind that settles deeper. The kind that sleep doesn't fix. His shoulders were slumped forward, like he'd been carrying something invisible for too long. His eyes didn't really land anywhere. They just passed over the room, distant and unfocused. You okay? I asked gently. He nodded without looking at me. Yeah. But every parent knows this truth. There's a kind of, yeah, that doesn't mean yes at all. I didn't push him. Instead, I told him he could lie down in my room for a bit. It was warmer in there. Quieter. Something we'd done countless times over the years when life felt too heavy to carry alone. He followed me in silence. The room felt different that night. Not uncomfortable. Not tense. Just unfamiliar. He sat beside me on the bed, hands resting in his lap, fingers slowly twisting together. His eyes stayed fixed on his hands, like they held answers he didn't know how to ask for. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't know what my son was feeling. People talk a lot about how hard it is when children are small. The sleepless nights. The financial stress. The constant worry. But no one really prepares you for the other hard part. The moment your child grows up, and you realize they don't need you the same way anymore. For 22 years, I had been Lenny's shelter. His reassurance. The person who made the world feel less sharp. But sitting there beside him, I understood something that scared me more than any hardship ever had. He was becoming someone I could no longer protect from everything. And I wasn't sure who I was without that role. Lenny finally looked up at me. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. It wasn't childish dependence. It wasn't simple comfort. It was confusion. The kind that comes when someone is standing between who they were and who they're expected to become. He looked like he was caught between being a boy and being a man, and unsure where he belonged. And in that moment, something painful settled into my chest. Maybe I didn't know where I belonged either. Because if he moved forward into his own life, if he started needing me less, then who was I allowed to be? Before either of us could say anything else, the doorbell rang. Sharp. Sudden. Pulling us both back into the room. I stood up and opened the door. It was our neighbor, Mark. He was the kind of person people describe as dependable. Always calm. Always steady. The kind of man who notices when something needs fixing and offers help without making a big deal out of it. He mentioned the heating, said winter was getting colder, and asked if everything was working properly. His voice was casual, normal. But when I turned back for just a second, I saw Lenny watching us. Not angry, not upset, just quiet, like he was noticing something shift, even if he didn't know what it meant yet. Mark wasn't just a neighbor in that moment. He represented something else, something outside our small, carefully built world. New conversations, new possibilities, a life that didn't revolve entirely around being someone's mother. And I think Lenny felt that change too. When Mark left, the house felt different, like something invisible had been acknowledged without a single word spoken. Later that night, there was a soft knock on my door. Lenny stepped in slowly and sat beside me again. His hands were clasped tightly, like he was holding himself together. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice low and unsure. "I don't know what's wrong with me lately." That sentence hit me harder than anything else he could have said. Because I saw it then. The pressure, the fear, the weight of adulthood beginning to settle in. "I feel lost," he admitted. And hearing that word, it broke something open inside me. Because the truth was, I felt lost too. This wasn't about romance. It wasn't about anything inappropriate. It was about identity. For 22 years he had been my son. For 22 years I had been his mother. But who were we beyond that? Who was he becoming? And who was I allowed to become when my role started to change? Those questions sat between us, heavy and unanswered. As I held my son while he tried to explain feelings he didn't yet understand, I realized something most parents are afraid to admit. Sometimes love holds on too tightly, not out of control, not out of harm, but out of fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of becoming unnecessary. Fear of not knowing who you are once the person who needed you most begins to grow. I hadn't trapped him, but I hadn't fully let him go either. And somehow, he felt it. "Maybe," I said softly, choosing my words carefully, "maybe we both need a little space to grow." He didn't pull away. He just nodded. His eyes filled, not with sadness, but with understanding. Because this wasn't about separation. It was about learning a new way to exist in each other's lives. Less dependence, more trust. And that's often harder than people think.